Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. This is Philippe de Grivel from the Brazilian chapter of the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. This is the last session of this incredible, extraordinary 20-hour marathon. Welcome, everyone. We're going to make it memorable. This is the last session, the 23rd session of the day, and we have a fantastic lineup of sustainable procurement practitioners to talk with us today. And we're going to really try and do a large condensation of everything that we heard during the last 24 hours into these during these next 40 minutes. So we're going to talk about how we can increase our impact using three levers. And we're going to do that by reviewing a really interesting survey that was prepared by Ecovadis and Accenture. And we are going to hear a little bit about the survey findings during a few minutes. And then we're going to have an interesting discussion about three of the main points that this survey highlighted. So before we start that, I'd like to allow the participants to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Emily. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Philippe. It's such a pleasure to be here today. My name is Emily Rakowski. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Ecovadis. I've been in the procurement technology space since 1999 with companies like Ariba and SAP, which probably most of you guys are familiar with. And I've been at Ecovadis for about 6.5 years now. So thrilled to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Emily. Miguel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Really happy to be here. So my name is Miguel Cossio. I'm a research director here at Gartner. And I've been with Gartner about 7 years. Before this, I spent over a decade in industry, always in procurement. And I help a lot of companies with their sustainable procurement strategies, selecting the right tools, and building a sustainable procurement engagement plan for their suppliers. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Miguel. And now Bertrand Conqueret is one of the co-founders of the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. So it's an incredible honor and privilege to have him with us tonight. So Bertrand, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Very happy to be with you, and it's my honor to be with you. So Bertrand Conqueret, I'm the CPO of Henkel, and very deeply involved into the sustainability agenda. I am one of the co-founder of Together for Sustainability in 2011, and probably very strongly inspired by that agenda at Henkel and at TFS, when together with my fellow and friend Thomas Udesen, we decided in 2019 on a Saturday morning that it's time for procurement to stand up and then to tackle the sustainability agenda. And altogether, we will make it until 2040. And 2030 is a fundamental and very important step. So happy to be with all of you, and very amazed of what has happened over the last 24 hours.
Thank you, Bertrand. And I myself, I'm based in São Paulo in Brazil. I am just setting up the Brazilian chapter of the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. So here in Brazil, and I'd like to extend a really warm welcome to all of those in Latin America. Buenas noches, boa noite. And we're going to kick this off with Emily presenting the highlights of the survey. We'll give Emily 10 to 12 minutes to show us what the survey revealed, and then we'll have a conversation with the rest of the team. Thank you so much, Emily.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to say again, how amazing I think the Sustainable Procurement Pledges and the work that Bertrand and Thomas have been doing. I was one of the original signers back in 2019. And Ecovadis is a big supporter of the effort. So we're just thrilled about the work that you guys do, and can't believe you do this 24-hour event. It's crazy, and it's awesome. So a little bit about the Sustainable Procurement Barometer. This is a study that we run every other year. We typically run this study with some significant research partner. So in the past, we've done it with organizations like HEC Business School or London School of Economics or Stanford, MIT, etc. And this year we were very excited and honored to run the study side by side with Accenture, who was not just a partner in name, but actually jumped in with us to help organize and reframe some of the questions that we have asked over the years, and also helped quite a bit extensively with the analysis and the findings. So a big thank you to our partner Accenture for all of the work that they did on the study with us. And so with that, we can move to the next slide and talk a little bit about who responded to our survey. Thank you. So it was a pretty large survey. We had respondents both on the buyer side, procurement side, and on the supply side, which makes the survey a little more interesting. We had around 600 respondents on the buy side and over 1,000 on the supplier side. The biggest region where responses came from was the US, the UK, with a smattering from Europe, India, and a lot of other countries, actually. What we do with the study is we identify organizations who we then tag as leaders based on their responses to the study. And so we had 5 criteria that we used to tag companies as leaders, accounted for about 10% of those that we surveyed on the buy side. And the key criteria areas that we look at to identify the leaders are the levels of supplier engagement, leadership buy-in into their sustainable procurement programs, integration of the sustainable procurement information into their other processes, data accuracy, and transparency that they drive through their program. So as I go through, if there are a couple of places where we talk about the leaders, that's who we're referring to as the top 10% of respondents in the survey based on those criteria. And if you want to download the report, there's a lot more information about the demographics and who responded and all of that.
And Emily, we'll be posting the barometer in the resources tab. So
I hope so.
Folks can click onto the link directly and download it directly during this conversation.
Okay, well, hopefully somebody has a copy of the report that they can put there. If not, I can post a link to it on our website as well in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Great, thanks. So there's 3 key levers I wanted to talk about today, and these are in a way sort of obvious, but there's a little more data behind that I can share. So like any major program in a large enterprise, C-suite buy-in tends to be one of the key drivers of success for sustainable procurement programs. But the rationale here is a lot about aligning what's happening in the sustainable procurement program with what's happening in the overall sustainability agenda of the company. And what are the promises that the C-suite has made to stakeholders and shareholders? And so we'll say a little bit more about that on a further slide, but over 70% of programs that we surveyed said that delivering on corporate sustainability goals was a top driver that made their program successful. The second lever is around procurement integration. I already mentioned this a bit, but bring the data that you have from your sustainable procurement initiatives and actually using it to make decisions while you're managing your processes around sourcing, contracting, procurement decisions in real time, awarding and ordering. Those are all critical times to have this data at your fingertips and make that a key part of your business decision. Unfortunately, less than 25% of sustainable procurement programs digitally integrate this data into the places where they need it to leverage it in real time. We do have a little bit higher percentages trying to integrate it more manually, and that's okay. But ideally, we want to get in a world where all of this information is seamlessly available and seamlessly being used in real time. So that's the second main lever area that we want to talk about. And the third one is value chain engagement. And that really means the level at which you're talking to your suppliers about your program, you're making it a mandatory part of your program, you're committing your own time and resources to make suppliers successful, to help them improve, etc. we actually, well, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we had a great quote coming out of our Sustain event last week about this, which I'll mention when we get to this point later. But interestingly, on the supplier side of the survey, 46% of the supplier respondents said that their customers mentioned sustainability as being important on paper, but it's not really integrated into their relationship with their buyers, with their customers. So a lot of buyers are talking the talk, but not really walking the walk when it comes to engaging on these topics. So that was kind of an interesting finding. All right, we can go to the next. So talking a little bit more about stakeholder alignment. We asked in our survey a little bit more around what are the business functions where sustainable procurement programs are having the most success aligning goals and getting buy-in and really being able to promote the program and find synergies. So not surprisingly, the two that kind of popped on this chart were the Office of Sustainability in large enterprises, where there's obviously going to be champions in that function who care about sustainable supply chain and want to engage on that topic, potentially help with budget or resources for those programs. So that's a high point of integration. And the second other high point, and even higher than the CSO's office, was actually in risk and compliance. And I'm sure this is in no small part driven by all of the major supply chain due diligence laws that have come on the market that I'm sure you guys have all talked about ad nauseum through the course of today's events, but that has become a much more strategic alignment for procurement over the past 2 to 5 years, let's say, and it looks like it will continue to be one of the key drivers for sustainable supply chain moving forward. But the important thing is, in order for these programs to thrive, to get more budget, to get more people, to get more attention, to get more usage, the continued alignment with corporate executives is critical, and that means the ability to talk intelligently about what you're doing with your program, showcase the roadmap for your program, showcase the results that you're getting from your program, and make sure everyone understands the benefit. So those are the keys to success on that. We'll go to the next one. The second area that we've already talked about a bit is the data and process integration, but in this chart, we're showing actually what are the processes in which this data is either digitally or manually integrated. And so the biggest area that for the joint bars here between manual and digital integration is in sourcing, which makes a lot of sense. You want to understand before you commit to doing business with a new supplier, you want to understand their sustainability strategy and if there's any risks, ESG related risks there. But you'll notice only 14% of that bar is digitally integrated. And then the other areas where we see a sizable amount of integration is in risk management, is in contracting, spend analytics, and in SRM, or a lot of times it's integrated into like a risk module that you might be using. So we see, again, a higher proportion of digital integration there with ordering systems like e-procurement. Maybe that's on the product page in an e-catalog system, that kind of thing, or with spend analytics, showcasing your spend coverage, like the actual amount of spend or categories of spend that you have covered by an ESG rating, that kind of thing. That's where we see most of our customers working on that digital integration. But the sourcing is the one that we would like to see a lot more digital integration on. Okay, and we'll go to the next. And last but not least, the supplier perception and engagement. This is really, really critical to the success of a program, because you don't just want to rate or evaluate risk in your supply chain on these topics. You want to improve. You want your suppliers to understand where they are and how they can get better on key topics in sustainability. And again, the suppliers have very divided perceptions of what their buyers' sustainability commitment is. So we talked about, a lot of them think it's just on paper, but 45% say it's top of mind and they do actively partner with their customer relationships. So that's a good statistic as well. That really balances that other 46%. So it's kind of even here on how many are actually working, strategically with their suppliers. And then how they're actually asking their suppliers to act on things is kind of the graphic on the right-hand side here. So many are obviously doing it through contract terms, notably the code of conduct, for example, that you would ask suppliers to sign. But then we're also seeing pretty high proportions asking suppliers to work on sustainability improvement strategies, like doing reduction on their GHGs or target setting for their GHG emissions, working on their DEI strategies and policies, working on living wages, working on other environmental issues like waste or product circularity, and engaging with content, providing e-learning content, providing other types of goals in their programs that they're looking for to really drive that joint collaboration. Performance targets, as I actually just mentioned, and then some are doing on-site audits as well for the suppliers that are showing up with more risk or more concerns, like on-site. So we do see some folks still taking it from a remote audit all the way to an on-site audit as well. So this is the most critical aspect from my perspective, and where we see our leading customers doing the most work, the most important work, and actually being able to report to their C-suite and to their company on the strides that they're making forward with their sustainable procurement programs. And I don't know if I have another slide. That might be it. Yeah, that's it. So we can go into a panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was wonderful, and the capacity to bring around 200 pages of content into 3 pages, that was wonderful.
Well, there was a lot more findings, so we encourage you to read the study, but those were some of the most important ones for sure.
So for the folks out there listening, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you like the last icon, if you click on it, it says resources, and you will find the link to the Barometer. So the full study that Emily just mentioned is available. So please download it and read it. You have, for those in Europe, it's only midnight or 11 p.m. So you have a ton of time to read it after this session. So we talked about 3 different levers. Okay, we talked about leadership buy-in. We talked about supply engagement and digital integration. So I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper in each one of those. So in terms of leadership buy-in and getting the executive stakeholders across the other business functions to be engaged, okay? So we see that those who are pioneers, those who are leading this agenda, have a very high degree of integration between the business functions. And that integration, it requires the ability to credibly present data-backed outputs, okay? You need to be able to show why you're doing this, how you're going to do it, and what we're going to gain from this, okay? And this is going to eliminate some challenges. This will provide risk mitigation, build resilience, enhance brand value, etc. So what we're saying here is you cannot do this on your own. You need the other parties to join the band. Okay, so I wanted to ask Bertrand specifically if you could provide some insights into your experience as a very senior sustainable procurement leader. How do leaders, and your experience of how you demonstrate that criticality of the sustainability agenda and get the buy-in from the others? Because this is something that we hear a lot. Sustainability is cost, sustainability is a lot of work. So I wanted to hear from you, what is your experience of how you drive that engagement?
Thank you very much for your question, because I think it is, when it comes to sustainability, I think we are all facing, I would call it the day one. And day one starts, it's a moment of decision. And I do believe in particular when we are CPOs, there is a moment where we need to stand up. And standing up, not reacting, but reflecting on the strategy. Which strategy do we want to drive in our procurement organization? But even more, how will we then also contribute to the strategy of the company where we are? So it's not in isolation. It's really to reflect strongly on that strategy. To share with you my case, it started really to me in a company, Henkel, where we have sustainability very high into the agenda. But it was, I received a question in 2011, 2010 from my CEO asking me, it's the time we should have the opportunity to have visibility on our supply base. How can you make our supply base compliance in regards to environmental and human rights? To be very honest, I did not knew. I felt the question extremely difficult. Of course, I wanted to go into that avenue, but how to make it? To make it short, I meet five other CPOs. We have the same problem, and we are creating TFS. And on the journey, we are meeting Ecovadis. Ecovadis in 2011 was also a startup. And then so you start to believe, to realize, alone I cannot make it. It's impossible to make it, but you need to be yourself convinced that you want to do something. And then you need to be pioneer, and then to be very humble, and not to be afraid to ask for questions. And that's why today an initiative like a sustainability procurement pledge is there to empower and to equip, to open the avenues. But it starts with me. Me as manager, me as leader, where do I put sustainability into my agenda? Could be eventually just to answer to requirements of my customer, could be to answer to requirements of regulations and deciding just to be compliant. But this is important to take that decision. Number two, very important, it is not a one-time effect. It's a long-term journey, step by step, incremental. Document. Today, we have talked also, and we talk later about data, but document. And very importantly, start to embed it into everything that we do. Do not put it into a corner and put it into the organization. So it has been for me more a 10 years journey, but a 10 years journey has been realize the value of collaboration internally with suppliers selected and then brighter, and very more importantly with peers, and asking for questions and being quite humble, because the journey requires, it's a marathon, but it's a very, very rewarding marathon. So that's my at least the first part of the answer is about that. Do it, but know where you want to do it, and then commit for it.
Thank you, Bertrand. And as I listened to you, the word that came to my mind was courage. You need courage to do this, because you know that you're going to meet some challenges.
Thank you very much for this. But to be very open also with you, courage is true. But I have learned courage from my peers. Thomas Udesen gave me the courage to stand up with him, to go on LinkedIn and to make the pledge. Together, we became courageous. And I am becoming every day more courageous when I see what happens in SPP, what happens into TFS, what we have to do. I am not born courageous. I am getting courageous because of this. And I do believe that leadership, that's the moment, especially now, right now, at that moment of time, 7 years to 2030, that's the moment to be courageous and to be a very courageous procurement profession. We have a lot of impact together, just together. And together, nothing can stop the agenda. Nothing. So the courage is something which is really getting together. And this is so important. And becoming courageous, we become also more alert, we become more equipped, and it is highly satisfactory. But at the same time, to be honest with you, it's never enough. It's never enough. So that's why the courage is coming from my colleagues and from all of you here.
Thank you so much. And what a demonstration of humility. I mean, it's extraordinary to listen to you. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask Emily and Miguel, do you have any insights as to this topic specifically on stakeholder engagement that you'd like to provide before we move on to the next theme?
I have a few thoughts here, right? So you're going to see that some people are struggling. Like some of them are very passionate and they're trying to make the case. In other cases, they already are in a position where they can influence change, right? But at the end, I think a few things that are worth highlighting. First of all, is as you're speaking to the other functions, right? You have to make sure that you're speaking in their terms, in things that they care about. No one cares if you're running or like collecting data from 1,000 suppliers. What they care about is the outcome, right? So make sure that you're combining both activity metrics to highlight all the effort and all of the things that you are doing, but also think about the outcomes, right? And how is that having a positive impact? So I believe that's That's one of the biggest things to have in mind. And then, I mean, as I speak with different companies and different CPOs and different sustainability leaders, it's usually when you make that change from not being the sustainable procurement person pushing the business, but now the business has metrics that they care about some of these outcomes, then it becomes extremely, it's not extremely easy, but way more easy, right? Or easier, because it's really about less pushing the business, but more the business pulling from you, because now you become a source of enabler to them, right? So I think those two are highly important in my view.
Thank you, Miguel. Emily, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I completely concur. And just to put some more meat on that bone for Miguel, like like years ago, our clients used to report on, number of suppliers that they had rated or percentage of spend that they'd covered. And that was okay. It was interesting. But in a world where we went through COVID and there was this big risk and resilience lens that executives started to put on everything, sustainable procurement programs could start talking about what proportion of suppliers are introducing more risk into our business, right? How are we mitigating that risk? What are we doing to improve their practices to reduce that risk? So that's kind of the risk lens you can put on the reporting and data. And then there's the more positive impact or, more of those other sustainability goal lens that you can put, which is we're doing decarbonization in our supply chain, scope 3 management, right? We're just to help meet net zero targets. And we're doing product circularity pushes with all our manufacturing suppliers to try to get packaging more, circular, to try and get, products more end of life friendly, those types of things. So those are areas where you can showcase you're collaborating with that supply base to reach the sustainability goals of the business.
And just one thought to that, like if you want a tip on how to influence others, I mean, and you're struggling to get attention, one of the things I found really interesting is just ask your sales organization what our customers are asking you to do, right? Because most likely customers are asking for these things. I actually had a client who was telling me, he literally told me, like, we don't care about sustainability. We don't believe in any of these things, but we still have to do it because our customers are asking for it, right? So if you're struggling to make that change internally, ask your sales organizations, because it's most likely that it's coming from that perspective as well.
Thank you, Miguel. Moving on, let's move on to the second theme that we talked about. So the second is digital integration. So we need to integrate the sustainability data into our procurement processes, both the transactional and strategic, in order to provide visibility and transparency of the whole supply chain. So that's something that is absolutely critical. So I wanted, Miguel, if you could start off maybe, this is where the digital and the sustainability transformations meet, obviously. So I wanted to ask you, what are you seeing in terms of, with your customers, in terms of availability of data in both quantity and quality? What are you observing in terms of digital tools availability? And maybe also, what are the challenges that your clients are talking to you about in terms of data and tool adoption?
Yeah, so I think there's two sides to this, right? One is the technologies to come up with the data that you need, but the second part is how do you use that data into decision making, right? So that second lever to me comprises those two things. So starting off on the technology aspect, it's really interesting to me to see how companies, a lot of the clients I'm speaking to, when they look for a sustainability tool, they want it all, right? And that, I just don't believe there exists one single platform to rule them all, right? So if you want to go really broad, maybe you can choose one platform. But if you want to go really deep in different topics, maybe you will need different platforms. There was a study from the Scope 3 peer group earlier this year. Just for Scope 3, over 60% of people told us that they were planning to use at least two tools or more just for Scope 3. Forget about the broader ESG from a sustainable procurement perspective, right? So the notion of one platform to rule them all, I don't think that exists. It's really more about thinking, well, how do we begin building that technology stack, right? Some applications that go really broad, some that can go really deep, etc. So that's on on the technology side and how do you access all of this data. But the second thing that to me is, I'm a procurement professional at heart, right? But the whole notion of embedding into decision making, to me, that's where it gets real, because we can, like making an analogy, right? You can buy the best sneakers out there, and you can sign up for a marathon, and you can join a gym, you can do all of those things, but unless you start running, you're never going to run the marathon. Right. So to me, it's embedding into how procurement operates. We actually did a study with the SPP last year. We do one every year, and I just uploaded that into the document section, right? But one of the things we asked was around people embedding their sustainability goals into their processes with the right level of priority, which is to me key. Right? One thing is to say, yes, we include it in tenders, right? But is it with the right level of priority to support your goals? That to me is the essence. And we discovered that a lot of people say, yes, we include it, but a lot of them told us it's not, it doesn't have the right level of priority. So if you have a net zero ambition and you're saying it's very ambitious and you only have a code of conduct in the tender saying, please disclose emissions even when we ask you, that's, you're including it, but not with the right level of priority. Right. So people have can access some of those things. But that's my 2 cents. And as you can see, I'm passionate about those two topics in particular. So I don't know, Bertrand, Emily.
Thank you. Bertrand wants to talk. Bertrand wants to tell us.
I can see him.
It's wonderful to listen to Miguel and to Emily, because I mean this is exactly you are tackling the right topics, and I'm back to what I was saying at the beginning to say what's your strategy. So I mean, digitalization or data and systems follow strategy first. What do you want? So if you really want to do assessments and audits, so then it requires specific processes, and you get specific data. And these specific data to do what? Are they dormant and passive somewhere, or do you integrate it into the way you will select your supply base? And you will define which suppliers you want to do the organization. So then we are moving from dormant data and results to shaping. And then we start to be responsible. Call it responsible sourcing. This is how it starts. I start to assess. I need a methodology. I need to, and I'm getting data. This data, I am collecting it, and I will enter it into my decision process. I'm not yet into the bidding, but to invite someone to the bidding, I will do that first. And then it starts to be real, and it starts to challenge myself. But with this, I can train my team. I can go into the content. I can reflect, and I can grow up. And this is that process strategy first. What do we want? What are the targets? When this is clear, I can go deeper. And today, technologies allows us so much. When I see what we had at the beginning, 15 years ago, it was paper. Today, we have a data, and then I can start really to build up so many new fields and accelerate. So, and then I can do similar when it comes. The next one would be everybody talks about the scope 3. Scope 3 is of course data, but first, what do I understand by scope 3? What do I want to do in scope 3? To do what? Is it for reporting and exclusively on future reporting, or is it to design my product, my processes, the future? So this requires really that discussions, and this is where it becomes to be complex. But before we enter in massive data collection, be very selective to do what. And I think this is so important. Strategy and target first, associate internally and externally, pilot it, and ramp up.
Yeah, and just a couple of very tactical ways that we see our customers integrating data, right? One is very specifically, as I mentioned earlier, taking information off the Ecovadis platform or other competitive platforms and moving it into directly their sourcing tools, their risk management tools, through APIs, their e-procurement systems. We have an integration with the SAP Business Network to actually get that data on the supplier level in the network. Those types of things where it's going to be there and hopefully help drive decision making if the whole procurement part of the business has agreed to make it a key decision making element. And then the second interesting thing that we're seeing more and more now, especially we have new partnerships with companies like Salesforce and Microsoft, where they're building sustainability clouds, right, for the overall corporate sustainability, or like Workiva, And they're actually bringing in the sustainable procurement piece as a main pillar of the overall corporate sustainability strategy. So they're trying to understand how is the work that's going on in the sustainable procurement supply chain or program, how does that look side by side with all of the other corporate sustainability goals that the company has. So it's actually taking a more strategic spot in that overall corporate sustainability view as well.
To your point, Emily, it's really about putting the data where it needs to be, right? So that you don't have to go into different, like you need to have the data at the point of decision so that you can start actually like using it more, right? Yeah.
My team came with a fantastic sentence 10 years ago. It was manage change at the source.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And this is what you just said. And it has been the beginning of responsible sourcing in the organization.
Fabulous. So before we move on to the third and last theme, I did want to pause for a second. You three just talked for 10 minutes about technology, data, and digital without saying artificial intelligence. So I applaud. I mean, it's extraordinary. I didn't know this was possible nowadays. That you could
Absolutely.
actually not say those two words in a conversation about technology. So wonderful. Thank you for that.
Intelligence doesn't always have to be artificial.
I agree.
Yes, you
There's a
demonstrated
lot of hype.
intelligence.
There's potential, but there's more hype than reality at the moment, I believe.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you for that treat. So we're going to move on to the third and last theme that Emily talked to us about. And Emily, I'm going to come to you to ask you to kind of double click on this theme. So it's about supplier engagement. Okay, so we need to go beyond just mere disclosure and assessment. We really need collaboration here, and we need to build capacity, foster shared commitment to the sustainability goals, enhanced and enriched transparency, and then we need to also work together on innovation in sustainable practices. And I'll before I hand it over to you, Emily, there was an interesting comment made in a session earlier. So we're talking here, we are talking about what we need to do with the suppliers, but the comment was you need to include your customers because you're the supplier of somebody and you're the customer of somebody else. So we need to add this supply and customer terminology in everything that we talk about when we mention collaboration. So Emily, I wanted to ask you any interesting examples to illustrate, what best-in-class collaboration practices could look like. What are your clients sharing, and then what does good governance of that collaboration look like?
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit about the foundations of the collaboration capacity building between buyers and suppliers. So there's a couple of things. One is obviously the transparency of information between the buyers and suppliers. So whether you're using Ecovadis, a competitive tool, a self-assessment questionnaire, or any other way that you're getting information about your suppliers' ESG practices, you need to, within the framework that you're using, be able to identify what are the strengths and the gap areas that you see with that supplier, make them aware of it, and make yourselves aware of it, and make the key people in your business aware of it. So you need some kind of a framework to actually share and have transparent information between the organizations as to where the strengths are and where the gap areas are for certain supplier relationships. And then, the other underpinning piece of this is the commitment to act on both sides. So a lot of times people say, oh, I'm just going to tell my suppliers the top 3 or 5 things they have to do. And, good luck to them, and we'll circle back in a year and see where they are, right? That's not really collaboration or commitment on both sides. So one of the quotes that came out of our Sustain event last week was, if the buyer or the procurement professional is not willing to spend as much time collaborating with the supplier on their results and what they need to do next as the supplier put into the assessment, then there's not equivalent commitment, right? And the buy side really needs to think about, I just asked the supplier to spend X amount of time on this assessment. I need to be willing to spend a similar amount of time on my side, collaborating with them and working on what are the key next steps that we can work on together, or that we're at least enabling them and showing them the right way forward. So that was kind of interesting. So those are kind of the foundational elements. And then from there, I think, it's really a matter of having those tools at hand. So you need to have content for the suppliers to use to improve. So that's why we have built like our e-learning academy and checklists and very topically specific things that can be used to, underpin those conversations and those activities that you're looking for the suppliers to actually do, whether it's writing new policies or creating new reporting or actually changing the way they, do things on a shop floor with electricity or water or, whatever it is. So those are the real conversations that need to be had. And a lot of times the suppliers are small or medium sized and they don't know exactly how to do these things. And they need to have, opportunities for capacity building in terms of understanding how to do those things, like renewable energy purchasing. Like that is a very unique skill set that a small or medium sized supplier may have no idea how to access renewable energy. So those are, getting them introduced to buying forums for smaller businesses and things like that. So there's a lot that needs to happen here, and everybody needs to build their understanding of sustainable business practices and then share those with their suppliers.
Thank you, Emily. Bertrand at Henkel, what are you doing differently to engage with your suppliers? Anything special that you want to highlight that others here today on this listening to us could replicate and be inspired by?
So suppliers are definitely extremely embedded into the programs. If I take the ramp up of sustainability massively through the assessments and audits that we manage, in particular through TFS and the enablement using the tools of Ecovadis, that has been a game changer because we have here engaged suppliers in highly constant involvement in communication, in collaboration to come to the point. Strategic relationships are essential also to work on sustainability deep into your product, your processes, your activities, with strategic supplier relationship moving forward then into the product design and sustainability. And we have just started a massive also at that stage ramp up of our scope 3 requirements towards suppliers. So we started with a few 8 years ago, but now we do it at bigger scale. But I think there is something very, at least important to have also in mind when we talk about sustainability and collaboration with suppliers. It's more than one-to-one relationship. It's really to understand the ecosystem and to work into the ecosystem. And that's why I became personally extremely motivated, and it is even a requirement to develop these relationships at the level of a company, at the level of a business sector, and at the level of a profession, because then it helps us to go into the ecosystem and to really go together and to shape this ecosystem, which community, which groups, and to have associations of activities, which allows to have the scalability, but also the flexibility to manage that agenda. So collaboration, absolutely essential with suppliers, one-to-one, and into the ecosystem. Just take the example of scope 3. We need to go very, very deep into the value chain. Just take the example also of the value chain, the Supply Chain Act. We need to go so very deep into the value chain. So all of that requires to understand the ecosystem, to engage in collaboration into the ecosystem. And this is a journey. So we, CPOs, we definitely need to embrace, to have a multi-dimension understanding. It's my company, a business sector, and a full ecosystem. And this is where the collaboration gain maximum impact to manage that agenda of sustainability.
Thank you, Bertrand. It's so inspiring. This, Miguel, tell us what you see in terms of collaboration and how can we improve.
I have two things, right? So the first thing is when you think about supplier collaboration, it's like forget about, I mean, if you've been in procurement for your entire life, forget about what you've learned and how you typically deal with suppliers, right? So it requires a massive change in attitude. It's no longer supplier, you have to go do this, right? It's more about, hey, we need to do this. How can I help you? Where the, like it's really about understanding the supplier's circumstances. And in procurement, we're not used to that approach. Let's face it, right? So I believe that's the first mindset change. When it comes down to sustainability, we cannot just demand suppliers to do things. We need to enable them to do those things. The second thing is I see a lot of companies struggling because they use the same approach for all of their suppliers, right? And have actually had companies telling me, very small companies saying, well, we sent our Excel-based 50-question survey to Microsoft and they didn't respond. I'm like, they won't respond, right? Why would they respond, right? So I think it's really about tailoring your approach based on the supplier's maturity, right? So if it's a supplier that already a lot of suppliers are going to be more mature than you are, right? So are you going to go in and ask for the exact same things of those than to an SMEs? Most likely not, right? So the maturity of the supplier is extremely important. And the second thing that you consider as how to determine how you're going to be going after these suppliers, engaging them, is your ability to influence those suppliers. So that means in some cases, more mature suppliers that are way bigger than you are, you cannot influence them, you use whatever they have, right? So maybe they don't use Ecovadis and they use someone else. Well, you use that. So the goal is not just to collect data. The goal is to make sure that suppliers are doing the right thing, right? So you need to bake that flexibility into the supplier engagement program. And then based on that, it can go from like very low touch where go access these learning materials and that's it, to very deep dives where you might be even sending people to their factories to help them identify opportunities to reduce energy or things like that, right? It's really about tailoring the approach that I think is going to help people unlock this further.
Philippe, if I might share also one element. I think it is also very important to understand also with collaboration the element of efficiency. We need to go fast and not to have the organization completely mobilized just to answer to, for example, a regulation. It does not make sense. We need to collaborate to get extremely efficient, effective to get that done in order to keep the resources focused on the customer, on the innovation, on the business, on what makes sense, not on fulfilling data for a reporting. It is an obligation, but find a way through collaboration that we can go faster, much faster. We will not have the opportunity to enhance resources massively in the organizations. That's more the opposite. So how can I make it? I can make it by finding peers, collaborations, or groups like Ecovadis and others, TFS, SPP, to accelerate and then to focus on what counts. My customer, the business, and the future of the organization. This is resilience. Otherwise, it's a source of burnout of organizations.
Yeah,
so there is a real call for urgencies to understand that and to make it as simple as possible, as focused as possible, but as fast as possible. And then I will not pronounce the word you mentioned, but technology can help to automate and to go faster.
Completely
wise words. Thank you so much, Bertrand. We didn't say the words, and Catherine in the chat said we didn't say ChatGPT either. So wonderful. So we've run out of time. It is a pity because this was really starting to get really, really good. I wanted to allow each one of you just a closing remark, 15 seconds each. Emily, please start.
Well, I want to re-emphasize again something Bertrand was talking about, which is the power of sector collaboration. So I don't know if everyone listening in understands exactly what TFS is and does, but there are 12 sector initiatives that Ecovadis works with in all different industries. And the power of sector collaboration and the biggest competitors in the world all coming together to have a common agenda with their supply base, asking their supply base to be assessed, asking their supply base to go on an improvement journey on particular topics that are highly relevant to the industry is a very effective and efficient way to make change in the industry. So I just want to reemphasize that point. And if we're listeners out there that are interested in joining a sector initiative, that is a very powerful model.
You stole my thunder with that one, Emily, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Like really reach out to your competitors, figure out like the more you can align with supplier with your competitors in terms of requirements, technologies, etc. Don't deploy a tool unless you actually understand what your competitors are using, what your suppliers are using, right? You don't want to be the one person using a particular tool having one particular set of requirements, right? So that is number one. And number two is, as much as you can, embed this into how the business does decisions. Otherwise, we're just placing unnecessary burden on the suppliers, and we're not really going to make any progress here.
Thank you, Miguel. Bertrand, it's up to you. Final remarks.
Very quick ones. Look again at the 24 sessions. So we had the last 24 hours. Reflect on these sessions, what is important for you, for the priorities you have, what is absolutely immediate and has to be tackled, select one. What is urgent but can wait a little bit, select two. And what is for the long term. Look at what has been done the last 24 hours. You have plenty of content, you have plenty of contact. I am sure many people with who you can start your collaboration and make your agenda in a much more effective and efficient way, and good luck.
Thank you, Bertrand. So I'm going to hand it over to the Sustainable Procurement Pledge team. Melissa, there they are. Deidre, Charlotte, hello. Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Hello.
Great job.
Hours later.
You made it.
Emily, thank you so
You're
much.
alive.
Bertrand, you guys have made it. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be with you guys. And I'm handing it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philippe, and thank you, everybody. Incredible. I just want to say a few words because, wow, we did it. The third annual World Sustainable Procurement Day. Excuse me if I can't articulate everything after all these sessions, but we have just completed 24 hours, 24 sessions. We have heard from 99 speakers, and we have seen over 5,500 individuals register for WSPD this year. That is something to celebrate, and we just wanted to pop in just for a minute to close this day and to put a little bit of a mark on that. Another big goal that we had this year is we wanted to be a little bit less Eurocentric. We wanted to grow and spread our wings into the world, and we have succeeded in that. You can see in my LinkedIn, I've been reposting all day, but we have seen watch parties coming up and popping up from Brazil, from India. We've seen Beijing, Shanghai, Fiji, in Spain, in Germany, in the US, really around the world, people coming together on this day. And we just want to say thank you for using this platform to highlight the importance of sustainability. I want to say thank you to Bayer and SAP and Eaton and so many of the other companies who came together to really make this day a day where they brought their teams together. We're seeing that happen more and more. We're really excited that this is an online platform, but we're also starting to see people coming together in their regions, in their companies, to use this as a moment to learn. And as Bertrand was just saying in the last session, to pick one topic that they want to be digging into. We also, and I'm really excited about this one, we had our first ever hybrid session that was hosted in The Hague by the Euclid Network at the Impact Summit. And there were 7 of our sessions, I believe, that were brought live onto the stage there, and some of their speakers that were coming into our session. So it was really incredible to start to see this virtual world also breaking into the real world. That was wonderful. So there are many highlights. I know that we're going to be going through all the sessions over the next few days, and we're going to be popping and filling your feed full of these highlights because we have just been inundated with the positivity and also the urgency of the work that we're going to do. But before I continue, maybe I can just pop over to the team. We've all been at this for the full 24 hours. So Catherine, what are some of your highlights from the last day?
Well, what a day, and what a stellar performance of all the speakers. And what really stood out for me is that almost all speakers emphasized the importance of collaboration, whether internal collaboration or the collaboration with the ecosystem partners. And really my takeaway is let's do it. Let's do it more. Collaborate to accelerate our efforts because we don't have time left. We really need to move faster.
Thank you. Charlotte, over to you, the owner of the agenda, as we've been teasing you about for days.
So many of you out there, it will have been your first World Sustainable Procurement Day. It was my first one as well, and it was incredible. It was very long, but it was wonderful. And I think one of the things that stood out for me, way back when, many hours ago, I had the privilege of speaking to some small business owners in APAC, so in Australia and in Indonesia. And I felt really strongly about having SMEs on the stage because the voices need to be heard, that they equate for 90% of all businesses. And I didn't know if that was going to be reflected in the agenda as we had it, but I was wrong. It was so amazing to see in so many of the sessions, businesses, large businesses, talking about collaborations with small businesses and how that was working to be a really beneficial relationship for both. So that was a real delight. But I think the thing that I found most wonderful and really heartwarming was, and it's why I joined the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, it was the heart that was in all of the presentations that we had seen. So we weren't seeing PowerPoint slides, presentations and speakers. We were seeing really, truly passionate people who are here with a mission and they don't want to do it alone. We're here as a group. And Tracy said it in the last session, we're here to walk the walk, talk the talk, get things done. And Bertrand, you said it's a marathon. It is a marathon. It certainly feels like a marathon, the last many hours. But we want to run it with you. And it's been an absolute pleasure. So we won't wait until next year to run the next marathon. We'll carry on tomorrow.
I think that's a beautiful segue. One of the things that we want to do as a team before we also hand it to Bertrand for the final words is we want to say thank you. We've been hearing all day that procurement has the power and the responsibility to drive change at scale. Oh boy, did you show up for that. We've been hearing that there needs to be a willingness to collaborate, what we've been calling collaboration, radical collaboration.
Yes.
I'm losing my words at this point. Radical collaboration. And we have seen that activate through all of the 24 sessions today. So really, it's been wonderful. We've also been hearing that we have to stop replicating. That's been a key message across every single session. We need to just get down to business and getting things done because time is short. So as we wrap this up, I would love to take a minute to thank every single participant by name if I could, because we would not have this movement. We wouldn't be driving this collaboration at scale if it weren't for each one of you. But I also want to extend a really special thank you to the entire team at Supplier Day. John, who kept all the tech running and was the hero of problem solving. Thank you so much. It actually went off without a hitch, again, for the second year in a row. So that's incredible. Thank you, John. Emily, who has kept us organized and going. Thank you. We cannot thank you enough. Deirdre, who has rolled up her sleeve and got down in the weeds with us every single day. We really appreciate you. Jen, who made sure that the word got out, who made sure that you all knew where to be, when to be there, and that we could be celebrating that so that we are growing and spreading our wings. Thank you. And Caitlin, who once again this year made herself and the team at Supplier Day available to the entire global community so that this day can happen. Thank you so much. To our 99 speakers, that's an incredible number of speakers, amazing knowledge. Tap into that over the next few days. Thank you also. Every single session was absolutely filled with content and real value for you to dig into. So I could be saying a lot more, but it is about 2 days past our bedtime. So I am going to pass this over to Bertrand. And with that, we're going to say thank you and a very good night. Bertrand.
Thank you very much, Melissa, Catherine, and Charlotte. Very, very simply and very quickly, procurement is more than a role, it's a responsibility. And this is one of the key sentences of the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. And today, we are an amazing community with a lot of responsibility. But as you just said, also, Melissa, people. You said it also, Charlotte, people. We talk about people, we talk about responsibility. And very importantly, the more you go through these sessions we have been the last 24 hours, the more you realize, we realize, I realize again, the solution is in the room. The solution is not outside of the room. It starts with me. And this is why we made this Sustainable Procurement Pledge, because if we have all the me together and standing up, we become the we. And we can change that together. And we can change the world. And this is a fantastic opportunity for business and prosperity moving forward. It's people, planet, prosperity. At that moment of time, if I really need to say, you are all amazing. It's an amazing community that we have built up, that you are continuously building up. Thank you so much to all the ambassadors, to all the pioneers, to all companies and individuals joining and supporting us. That's definitely the mission that we have, and that's definitely what we will achieve, because we will collaborate all together across all our communities and all our diversity. Super diverse, super inclusive. What a unique experience. And this is what we can have and we can achieve and we can change. I am so proud of what you are doing. It was a vision of Thomas and myself. It was a conversation. We wanted to engage. I got the courage of Thomas to do it. You make me courageous every day, and really want to pass to all of you my gratitude for that. Today, I also want to think very deeply to Thomas. He's currently on a boat in a race somewhere close to China. UNICEF boat was number 2 today in the race, so it was wonderful. He is an amazing gentleman, and I think he is today really also realizing a dream he had in his life to go in such a journey. I'm so happy we have been able to manage also that day without him, telling him we can make it. We make it all together. And so thank you very, very much. The job continues tomorrow morning. We have plenty of content. We select one item that we implement over the next days all together. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.